We bumped into a girl on Sunday who was a volunteer here, and she said her goal was to make it back within 5 years, and she made it back in 2. So I don't know if it's Zambia or Peace Corps volunteers in general, but it captures your heart and your being, like who you are, in a way that even if you're anticipating, you could never expect.
Hey there, stranger, what you talking about? I don't know you, but I'm gonna...
Gathered around a campfire, staring up at a breathtaking sky, for a second it's easy to imagine why Severin Gorley would leave behind the comforts of America. Then you consider the lack of electricity and running water, the 8-kilometer trek to a main road that is still 45 minutes from town, and the seemingly impossible task of building sustainable fish ponds in an area that has only known agriculture.
But spending time with Severin and 3 other current Peace Corps volunteers, we were able to see why hundreds of American youths decide every year to leave everything they've ever known behind.
There are currently 146 volunteers serving in Zambia, and Andrew, you and I had the utmost pleasure of spending a few days in Central Province, seeing how a few PCVs, it's the acronym for Peace Corps Volunteers, were getting along.
That's right. We piled into our embassy car, and with the expert driving of our co-worker, Lakson, we made our way through Serenje and Mkushi and learned a lot about PCV life in Zambia.
These are usually supposed to be covered and stuff like that, but there's only about 8 of us using this at the most, so it's not too big of a deal. And the fact that there's bugs and frogs living in it, I actually think is a good thing.
That's Elizabeth Otter, a PCV in Chilata village near Mkushi, and yes, she is describing her water source.
A decent walk from our home in Chalata, the natural watering hole, which measured about 1 meter across and 1.5 meters deep, serves Elizabeth and the family of 7 that lives next door. Most Peace Corps volunteers take up an adopted family during their stay, and it was apparent that Elizabeth is quite close with hers, particularly the kids.
We actually arrived in Chilata a week after Elizabeth's family, who was visiting from Chicago, had left. We asked Elizabeth how her biological family got on with her Zambian family.
Well, I mean, they asked my dad if he wanted to kill a chicken, and, my dad's never killed anything before. My mom was plucking feathers off of the chicken, helping make food. It's just totally different from their lifestyle in the States. But I think they really enjoyed it. They know that it's something that makes me happy, so...
And I must say, she seemed very happy with Zambian life.
She did mention that it took a while to adjust to the new, slower pace in the Zambian village.
The living life isn't the hard part. I would say being accepted into society is. It takes a while. Like, I'm just starting to get invited to kitchen parties, in weddings and things like that.
And what was interesting talking to the volunteers was that not only was the change of pace in life not too difficult to adjust to, but living in general wasn't that difficult at all.
That's right. We were both surprised to find that cooking over an open flame, bathing with a bucket of water, and using facilities that are literally a hole in the ground is not the hard part. Instead, it was the work.
The first thing a listener must understand is that each Peace Corps volunteer is sent to a site where there may or may not have been a volunteer before. And at their site, the volunteer has to implement specific programs that will better the lives of villagers.
Elizabeth, for example, is a worker who spends time at a clinic and educates villagers on topics like HIV, malaria, birth control, and antenatal care.
Severin, whose song in Bemba you heard earlier, is a fish farming volunteer. He makes sure that fish farmers who built ponds with the previous volunteer maintain and expand their operations. Another volunteer we spoke with, Ashley, is also doing fish farming.
And she's been having quite a bit of trouble getting people to buy into her programs.
Just getting people mobilized to do work, it's incredibly difficult. And it's, you put all this effort into planning projects and setting up workshops, and when there's such little follow through, it becomes it just becomes so discouraging. And yeah, I know it's very difficult.
So the frustration is understandable.
Yes, and Ashley has some advice for future PCVs.
You have these ideas of like what you're going to do as a Peace Corps volunteer coming into it, and then I think to stay here you have to kind of scale back like your idea of what you're going to do.
And for many of the current PCVs, that means finding other ways to make a difference.
Here, what's 10 plus 7?
17.
What's 8 plus 2?
10.
What's 7 plus 9?
15.
For Erin, who's working as a health volunteer educating the villagers in Muchinka, she's making a difference in her own backyard.
So how do you make the 7 into a 10? How many do you need?
3.
3. So what's 5 minus 3?
2.
2. What's 2 plus 10?
12.
Good boy.
While Erin's work at the school and clinic can pay huge dividends in the long run, her work with her neighbor Kaunda, a 10-year-old who knows Muchinka and Muchinka only, is just as rewarding.
You know, it's prioritizing and knowing that, like, things I do here, like hanging out with Kaunda and helping him learn how to read, and, you know, that's, like, equally as fulfilling as meetings I have in the village. Because I feel like, you know, working with the kids here, I don't know, I just think it's a really, like, it's a useful thing, and I think they get so much out of it, and it gives me so much, like, reward, like, to see, like, them progress. Like, just to see how much, like, English he's learned in the last 10 months is just really gratifying. Peace Corps has 3 goals. The first is, you know, working with sustainable development, and then the second is cultural exchange between the 2 countries. And I think that's probably the more important thing. It's just, you know, just me being here, I feel like has an impact on, like, on the people that I live with and that I work with on a daily basis.
And believe us, her presence is paying off. Kaunda,
No, he's gotten much better.
what do you want to be when you grow up?
Going to be pilot.
You want to be a pilot? Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's...
Where do you want to fly?
Where do you want to fly to the first time you get a plane? Where do you want to go?
To America.
While putting the idea of a better life in the minds of villagers is a goal, there is no objective to change people's culture or history.
Elizabeth knows it's possible to make improvements without sacrificing a way of life.
But sometimes that culture can lead to misunderstandings.
There are stereotypes inherent in every culture, and Severin and Elizabeth recall facing those in the villages.
Elizabeth is quick to point out that she is mindful to respect everything she hears.
Who am I to say a shooting star isn't actually a witch flying at night? Because I have teachers telling me that all the time. Like, these are teachers that have gone to college and teach in the schools that are trying to persuade me that shooting stars are witches.
But despite these obvious differences in culture and beliefs, every volunteer talked about the similarities between people in the villages and people in America.
And there are things you realize about people and how the cliche saying that people are all the same is so true. And I can't think of a way to say that will make somebody really understand how true it is.
Severin went on to mention that people in the village have the same hopes and dreams as everyone else, and he's found himself spending a lot of time training the villagers in ways to achieve those dreams.
And a lot of that is convincing people to take responsibility for everything they do.
While you're living, you can count on God to bring you into the world, take you out, but in the meantime, it's all on you. The head man here told me, we would just listen to Peace Corps, because we can depend on Peace Corps. And no, you can't. Who's going to be here in 2 years, me or you? You have to depend on yourself.
What caught me completely off guard was how business-minded these Peace Corps volunteers are. In a way, I was expecting long-haired hippies looking to experience nature for 2 years. But that's not the case at all.
It is an interesting balance between adapting to the Zambian culture and accomplishing a job. Here's Severin.
It doesn't bug me when I go to somebody's farm and they're not doing anything or they're out drinking. It only bugs me if people have been saying, we need to call a meeting about this. We have a meeting about this. I'm like, okay, I'll arrange something, and I arrange it, and they don't come. or they come 3 hours late. If somebody's gonna, show that level of disrespect for not me but themselves, for what they want to learn, then yeah, I'm gonna tell them their own language. You're late. Why? You're drunk. Why? And I think I get more respect for doing that.
So while the volunteers are teaching much needed health and business skills, they gain quite a bit personally. While it may not be in the bank account, the 2 years are certainly not a personal waste.
Elizabeth fully acknowledged that she's getting a lot out of her time as a PCV.
I mean, I'm starting to realize that there's a lot of selfishness in being a volunteer, because you do have the time to reflect and think about yourself and grow, but at the same time, you also learn how to handle people and different situations that you might actually need when you're working in a professional setting back in the States someday.
Erin also spoke about the personal time.
I have time to think about what kind of person I want to be. In the States you're inundated. You never have 2 seconds to yourself. And here you can actually take the time and think about what you want, who you want to be. So I'm enjoying that.
All the volunteers we met were enjoying their time. Elizabeth mentioned the days go by slow, but the weeks and months fly by.
And they all talked about how much Peace Corps has shaped them. Maybe Elizabeth put it best.
So I don't know if it's Zambia or Peace Corps volunteers in general, but it captures your heart and your being, who you are, in a way that even if you're anticipating, you could never expect.
And while we only experienced it for a couple of days, I think we understood, maybe briefly, exactly what Elizabeth means.
Hey there, stranger, what you talking about? I don't know you, but I'm gonna find you. I ain't never met a boy like you before. Never had nothing I knew for sure. But I know things are gonna get better, though, before they get worse. Yeah, I know